enjoyer. This subtype is interested in a more highly advanced dimension. They look at the sky as an escape from the earth. 1 to 1/7s have a passion for embellishing reality, for idealizing things and seeing the world as better than it actually is. Their need for idealization manifests as a passion for viewing life as it could be, or as they imagine it to be. People with this subtype tend to look at things with the optimism of somebody who's in love. Everything, that gush, see, there's the gushiness, the overstatement. Everything looks better when one is in love, and the 1 to 1/7 takes refuge in this kind of positive experience as a way of unconsciously avoiding deeper emotions they perceive as negative, unpleasant, or scary. It is said that love is blind. 1 to 1/7s may be said to be blind in the same sense. They display a bit too much enthusiasm and optimism and pay disproportionate attention to the positive data in a situation. And so they can do this a lot in relationships. They can idealize their husband, they can idealize their children, and refuse to see the reality. 1 to 1/7s have a need to fantasize, a need to dream, the need for rose-colored glasses, and a tendency to be almost too happy or too enthusiastic. Yeah, that definitely nails it. This can be seen as an overcompensation that reflects an unconscious desire to deny or avoid the painful or the boring or the frightening parts of life. They can experience an underlying fear of getting stuck in darker feelings. A typical trap for these 7s occurs when the frustration of not having or experiencing something gets unconsciously replaced by a rose-colored fantasy which serves as a satisfying substitute. So they're living in a bit of a fantasy world that they've created for themselves as a buffer. The title given to this type is Suggestibility, which is similar to seeing the world with imagination, but it also has to do with being gullible, with being easy to hypnotize, and being susceptible to the infection of enthusiasm. They display a prevalence of thought and imagination over feeling and instinct. And you can sense there too, perhaps, that there's a vulnerability in relationship, because if someone sees this about them, you can really play that up and really sucker them in. They experience anxiety about the difficulty of engaging in many scenarios at once and having to give up something. So that overactive mind is thinking of, well, this could happen, that could happen, I could lose this, I could lose that. So there's catastrophizing. They can tend to be restless and take part in many activities at the same time. Their excitement and anxiety can cloud their perception of reality. So, in working on themselves, the 1 to 1/7s can move toward the virtue of sobriety through noticing when they are living in their imagination as opposed to reality, and why observing the tendency to embellish and idealize, and explore the feelings and fears behind these tendencies. So they can note where they're being, exaggerating and wanting to puff up experiences or relationships. Okay. Examples. Robin Williams. Wow. Not self-preservation. I was about to say social. Just very Chevy Chase, Lin-Manuel Miranda, incredible artistic, qualities, writer. Jonathan Van Ness, George Clooney, Michael J. Fox, Cameron Diaz, Pierre Cardin, again, great creator, Sarah Ferguson, Roberto Benigni. Definitely a one-on-one. I remember that movie that he won the Oscar for. He drove me crazy. Do you remember when he was his acceptance speech? He wouldn't shut up.
And he walked on the chairs.
And he was jumping on chairs. And it was like, oh, for God's sake, somebody get him off stage. Does anybody remember the name of the movie? Life is Beautiful. There you go. Yeah. when I saw his name, it's like, oh, that's why I had such a reaction to him. Again, it's that like just overboard, like bring it down.
Yeah, Robert Williams was that way too. I remember an interview Terry Gross did with him, and I thought, would you ever let her ask you a question? He just did a constant stand-up the whole interview.
Yeah, manic. See, there's the manic.
Denying deep pain. Very important to know
Right.
that.
And ends up committing suicide because, you know, the shadow gets you if you don't deal with it.
You didn't say Dick Van Dyke, interesting, since we identified Mary Poppins as the Peter Pan.
Right. Austin Powers. I don't know too many. Miriam Maisel, the incredible, wonderful Mrs. Maisel. She's a great set. Very social.
So Linda Bob's Burgers, I love that.
I'm not familiar with it.
It's animated.
Animated, yeah. And then politicians, Ram Dass. Okay. Social 7. Duke of Windsor. Wouldn't have picked him as a 7. He seems very uptight and more. But Thomas Jefferson, Galileo Galilei, Mozart, definitely that Robin Williams kind of, and you know, again, like dissolute and not pulling it in, not taking care of his life, ends up dying young, massive deaths, you know, all of that. Gluttony. Joe Biden? Now there's one that really scratched my head out. He just not
Social.
Well, these are all guesses. You know,
Yeah, well, and that's why some of them just don't sort of sound true.
Some are really obvious and some.
John F. Kennedy, I would have thought of 3 myself, but who knows?
No, I think it was 7. I believe sexual 7. I mean, well, we'd have to go with the tritype. It probably was 3 hard type.
Okay, so
Mama also type 7, and remember that Robin Williams was diagnosed with Lewy body brain disorder.
Yes.
Before he committed suicide.
Yeah.
Oh. All right. So, Lori.
So if you're, say, a 7 or a 1, do you, when you,
Yeah.
okay, do you go to one of the subtypes when you?
You stick with your subtype.
No, but that's not what I'm asking. But say I'm
Whatever
a
your
1 and I go
subtype-
to a 7.
Whatever your
Will I go to a
subtype is- Whatever your
subtype?
subtype is as a 1,
Yeah.
you will go to that subtype as a 7.
Oh,
Your
interesting.
subtype is
Stays
constant.
constant? That's interesting.
So, any 7s? Who are the 7s in the room again?
7. I have a story about a 7, my sister.
Okay.
I'll do it before the 7, so let that be the finale.
Yeah, I wanted to share this story because it taught me so much about my sister and about 7s. So this occurred on the day that we had the funeral for our mother, about 10 years ago. So we were 2 women in our mid to late 50s, and I'm a 4, and we were both very close to our mother. So I was really sad. She had been living with me the last few years of her life, and I was really grieving. My sister, though, was also very close to her, but here's the difference. My sister, in her mid-50s, showed up at the funeral. She's a 7. Showed up at the funeral in a black mini dress, low cut. High heels. We're outdoors, walking on hills, you know. She spent the first hour there before the actual burial doing basically stand-up with the guys who worked there. So she had everybody who worked at the cemetery like around her in a circle, and she had them all laughing hysterically. And she's super smart and witty and all the best qualities of the 7, but this was not what I was looking for on the day that So after about an hour, I pulled my sister aside and I said, listen, sweetie, I know this is how you cope. I get it. I said, but I just really want to let you know that this is the one and only day that I bury my mother, and I am very sad. And I just need to be allowed to be sad. My 7th sister burst into tears, sobbing on my shoulder, and cried the entire rest of the...
She said it's your fault.
No, and then what's really amazing, and this is what I learned. First of all, I learned that she needed some support to be able to get in touch with that. You know, it was just going to be way too much for her if she didn't have that, and she needed that. The other thing I learned is that for the following year, my sister did these 2 unbelievable things with others who were in pain. And one was that she took a teenage boy into her home whose mother was dying of pancreatic cancer and made it okay for him for the year that his mother was dying. And the second thing, so this would be kind of what some of the social 7s can do in the way of sacrifice. And the second thing she did was she had a dear friend, because of course being a 7, she's been to every country in the world 1,000,000 times. And so one of her dear friends in Ireland, where she lived for a while, was also dying. And she traveled back and forth every month to be with the children of the woman who was dying and to help them get through it. So I think, you know, we do give 7s sometimes short shrift that they're all superficial and they want to have fun. But they can also, the good side is that they can really tap into other people's suffering and what helps them out of it.
Very good. Yeah, that's a real great example of the integration that we're talking about, you know. So you were laughing hysterically about the funeral story. Don't tell me you had the same story and that you were it. So who are the 7s again? So who would like to share?
I'll just,
Kristen.
yeah, hi, I'll just say something really quick. For a long time, I thought I was a 9. But in learning more about the Enneagram, I'm now more of a 7, but I'm more of a subdued 7. I don't have, like, the real strong wit and sense of humor. At times in my life I did, but I'm feeling now in my life I'm a little more subdued. I go to the 5 a lot, and when I do go to the 5, I feel more relaxed. But yet, I just got back from Disneyland, spending about 4 days, and had a great time, and my favorite ride was a Peter Pan. Peter Pan flight. Because when we're flying, you know, in the car and the stars, and, you know, that's like, oh my God, that was heaven to me. And I noticed too with myself, if I don't have things planned, and in other words, I have a surgery coming up, a big surgery, and I'm really freaked out because I know I'm going to be staying 7 weeks of recuperation in home. So I'm feeling a lot of anxiety because as a 7, I don't like this, and I don't know what I'm going to do. But for the last few weeks too, I've been very much in my imaginative mind. And I do go to my imaginative mind. Fantasy is probably fantasy adventure books. Lord of the Rings was absolutely my favorite. I can idealize with the characters, with Frodo Baggins. Let's put this, you know, let's put our foot and have an adventure. Put our one foot in front of the other, like Bilbo Baggins says. I love stuff like that. So it's really interesting to me, you know, finding out about myself, and love it. I like being a 7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And 7s do like, I believe, sci-fi and all of that sort of imaginative stuff, you know, Lord of the Rings, all of those type of novels and movies.
And the denial of pain also makes is where the 9 and 7 can be confused. So if there's anybody wondering about that.
Okay.
They do it in very different ways. 9s go in their inner sanctum and, you know, fantasize and idealize everything, and 7s get out and adventure. But yeah, denial of pain.
All right, Caroline, another 7. Wonderful.
Well, I think Larry has helped me balance my 7 because he's a 5, and that's where I do go some. Well, We think he's a 5. But I can identify with so much of this. And like Kristen, I'm not the jokester and so on necessarily, but I'm always planning, and we have been everywhere in the world. This last October we went to Puerto Vallarta, and who was it that went with the grandkids on the high wire obstacle course, all the slides, water slides, and the zip line and all of that stuff? The adult was me doing that. So I could just give you lots of different stories. Another one was I just thought of when you were just talking was when I was on the jury and we had to deliberate, and people were not doing what I needed to get done. And so I had organized all of them, and I need to get out of here. We got to get this done. So that kind of a thing, and always wanting, we'd go on these Larry used to call them forced marches, hikes, and and oh, come on, just over the next hill, Doesn't matter that 3 hours ago we ran out of water. Just have to see a little more.
You have no idea.
Oh, we do, Larry, we do. So, the line that comes to my mind, Caroline, for you, I think, is that if you don't have something good to say about someone, don't say anything. And I think that's a very, maybe 7 quality. It's like,
Oh, that would be me.
Yeah, no, I know it is.
And
I
also,
know that about you.
Just get over it.
Yeah, that's one you want to banish from your repertoire.
Or only say it around.
I can feel that.
So, hi everybody.
Hi, 7.
Hi. I like everybody to be happy, and so those of you that put on your little happy face on your name tag today, thank you so much. It just makes me feel great. But I've been a lot of places because it's really fun. Like, you need to ride camels to the pyramids type thing. I mean, I do that. And then if you're going to be baptized, you have to go over to the River Jordan to get that done. And if you need to do something idealistic, I guess you could go to Russia and start AA or something. Those are just things that I would like to do that I do. But one thing that I really think is a lucky break for me is I always figured that God liked me. And the reason is because I genuinely think this is a wonderful world, and I think it's just like so beautiful. So if I'm gushing, it's probably real, right? But the other thing is, and this is just like about the Enneagram in general, one thing that I didn't know before that is really interesting to me is that it is your childhood wound that is going to determine your number, right? So for me, it was perfect. It was absolutely clear. So when I was like 2 years old, the day after Christmas, which was a really happy time for me, the house burnt to the ground, right? So I was separated from my family for almost a year, right? So of course I would have been a 7. That's how that works. And I never knew that. So it's just like fascinating. The other thing for me, though, also is that unity works out great for me, right? Because I really like silence. Right? I'm a busy person with a busy mind. So when I have silence, it's like, it just takes my breath away. So I like all of that. Yeah, it's really fun to be me.
We know. We're very jealous. Hang on a second, you just said something there I wanted to add on to.
About the topic maybe?
Well, yeah, or as I had said before, it's the perception. It doesn't necessarily mean that there is a one, but it's how you perceived it. But in that case, you could see, yeah. So let's hear from any of the other 7s. Carol.
Well, I'm a 7 with a 6 wing. It's very strong. So I'm not as gushy as our other 7. When I was 24, I dyed my hair green on St. Patrick's Day.
As you do.
Yeah. Well, not everybody did.
No, I know, I'm joking. That's my point.
Yeah. I think because I have had different things, very serious things happen in my life, I'm much more subdued. But it feels comfortable to me. And now we're moving to Mexico to Disneyland. Yeah. Oh, I also, Carolyn, wanted to say, this guy is a 5. He chose it, I didn't. And he is very stabilizing for me. I love it.
Great. So we have 2 examples of a 7, 5. And, you know, that's what I've often said, that I think it falls that way, that, like, again, I'm a 1. I love being around 2s because they're so, you know, affectionate and building me up. Thank you, Sue. Or 9s, like Dennis, you know, because there isn't that critical energy coming from them. So maybe there's numbers that you feel attracted to, and often it's the triad, you know. It's like either a wing from your number, or it's the number that you go to for positivity and integration, so it works. Any other 7s? I know we're over time. Any comment from the gallery over here?
Another 7-5 combination.
Oh, really? Another 7-5 combination. Look at that.
Yeah, I'm not mainly a 7, and what I have found in the Enneagram is that I'm probably basically a 5. I have a lot of 1, and then there's the 7. And so I find that I am a compulsive vacation planner.
There you go. You got that in there.
And yeah, and I just absolutely love it. So in March we're going to Roatan in the Caribbean, and in July we have a beach cottage reserved in Delaware, and so that's more how I express my 7 part. Than, but in a 5, I'm more of a rebellious 5. I come from a very 5 family, but I'm the black sheep of the family.
Okay.
So I definitely, you know, I have a lot of 5, but I also try to escape from the 5.
Okay. Well, you know, travel and adventure is very much a 7 thing. So, you know,
I just took one of those things.
he's the 7, right?
Oh, yeah, right.
I'm the 5.
No, he's very definitely the 5. He's my anchor, thank God for him. No, it's funny, but yeah, I just took one of those little tests that come by on Facebook, you know, how many countries have you been in? I've been in 87 countries. But that's the 7, but you know, I'm done. So thank goodness for my 5, because now I'm ready and very, very happy to be anchored.
You're done?
I'm done, yes.
You want to travel anymore?
No, I'm done. No, Tahoe's as far as we're going.
All right, so, you know, if this is your first time here, the tendency could be, as you hear the presentation, you think, oh, I'm definitely a 7. And then when you come next week, it's like, oh, no, maybe I'm an 8. It can happen like that. But I want to bring your attention to the Wisdom of the Enneagram book, that we have a copy or 2 left in the bookstore. And on page 17, 18, there's the Rizzo Hudson quest. And what it is, it's just, there's 2 groups of paragraphs. 3 paragraphs in group 1, A, B, and C. And what you do is you read the 3 paragraphs and you say, okay, this one sounds like me. And then you go to the second group, X, Y, and Z, and you pick whichever one of those 3 you think you are. And then if you go to page 18, you match up either A, B, or C with X, Y, and Z. So you go, well, it's A and Y. And there's a little grid that will tell you then what that means, which number you are. And it seems to work. Several people have done this and said that's how they found out who they were. So I'm not a big...
Page number again, please?
16, 17, 18. Sorry?
That's from David Daniels' book.
No, this is from the Wisdom of the Enneagram.
Oh, from Wisdom?
Yeah, it's right there.
That's the Wisdom, okay.
Yeah, it's in the very beginning about how to figure out who you are. And I mean, I kind of rail against those long 20 questions and 20 more questions and 20 more questions. As I said, the best way I think is to sit like this and to look at people and get the sense of their energy. But I have to say, this seems, I haven't looked at that before, seems to work for people. So that's just a thought.
Did you put that on the resources?
I didn't. I didn't. Yeah. Boy, you're really digging my one Achilles heel here. I'm not perfect. I didn't do it. Let me go beat myself up for an hour.
I'd like to make a commercial announcement as long as we're talking about resources. 2 weeks ago, this book by Roxanne Murphy came out called Deep Living with the Enneagram, Recovering Your True Nature. And Roxanne does an incredible job at taking us through the journey, using the metaphor of iceberg. So you see like the 7 above the level and what's really happening going through each of the subtypes. The graphics are great. She also has an Enneagram coaching program. She was one of John and Russ' master teachers.
Very good. And also, I have to laugh how the universe works. So Richard Rohr, guess what? His daily meditation starting on Monday is on the Enneagram.
Oh, wow.
He's doing for 3 weeks. And I'm like, thank you, universe. You're giving me all of this research that I don't have to do now. It's all lined up.
So we just get on his website?
You can sign up, yeah, if you go to the CAC, Center for Action and Contemplation.
Oh, that's right. He's doing the emails.
Yeah, he sends out a daily word type thing. And so this app is the Ennea app, E-N-N-E, capital A-P-P. So capital E, E-A-N-N, capital A-P-P. You can get that for $2.99 with through your iTunes or whatever. And you can also sign up, then I did send that out about how to get the daily reflection for your number and one other number. And that's something like Enneagram Thought for the day or something.
Yeah, it's Ennea Thought.
Ennea Thought.
But you go to EnneagramInstitute.com.
The EnneagramInstitute.com. Okay.
So
All right.
Kathy Lee said that you could tell your type by your childhood wound.
By what?
Well,
That's pretty
generally,
generally.
there's an associated, yeah. But as I said, we have to be careful now because
How
sometimes it's
you
a
perceive
perception.
it.
Yeah. Okay, it's 20 to 12, and I know we're over time, so I want to respect that. Thank you all. See you next week for the 8th.